This is a story of Wild Girl by Chris Wormel. If we look at the blurb on the back of the book, it tells us about the story. Does just what a good picture book should do. Takes 4 to 6 year olds outside of themselves to a place where they can imagine being brave and alone, but ends with a reassuring embrace. This is the story of a little wild girl and her small brown dog, who live all alone in the middle of the wilderness. One day as they return to their cave in the bitter winter cold, they come across some bear tracks in the snow. Let's see what happens. Just take a moment to think and see if you can predict what might happen in this story. This is the story of a little girl and a small brown dog who lived all alone in the wilderness. The little girl had no one to brush her hair, or wash her face, or tie her shoelaces, just like you do. So her hair was a terrible mess and her face quite grubby. She had no shoelaces to tie because she had no shoes, but her feet had tough soles that were quite used to stepping on sharp stones. She didn't need them. The small brown dog had fleas, and I expect the little girl did too. There she is with her little brown dog. Can you see? No shoes. Is she dressed like we dress? I wonder what time this story is happening. The little girl never went to school because, of course, there were no schools in the wilderness. She had to learn things for herself. The small brown dog learnt too, and there they are, learning lots of things together. There were no shops, so they couldn't buy food. They had to hunt for it. Sometimes they caught trout. Can you see? She's got a spear to catch the trout. And she cooked them over a little fire of twigs. Sometimes they gathered berries and roots, and they even ate insects. Could you imagine having fish and insects for your tea? They lived in a cave high up on the side of a mountain. From there they could look out and see far, far away, almost to the edge of the world. In all the wild wilderness, the little girl never once saw the smoke of another fire curling up into the sky. And there she is in her cave with her dog looking out. Sometimes she called out, but never ever heard a reply, except for the echo of her own voice calling back from far on the mountain tops. When the small brown dog barked, he was a little puzzled. There seemed to be lots of other dogs all around the mountains, but he could never see any of them. Do you think that's because the dog doesn't understand about echoes? On warm summer nights, the little girl and the brown dog slept out under the stars. Then in the autumn they gathered dry bracken and made a big nest at the back of the cave. It was cosy and snug, and mostly it was warm, but in the coldest of weather they often kept a fire burning throughout the night, and there's the warm glow of the fire in their cave. One winter's day the little girl and the small brown dog were collecting firewood when they came upon tracks in the snow. Big tracks, bear tracks, tracks heading towards the cave. There's the tracks. How do you think they're feeling? Do you think they're excited or do you think they're nervous? They followed the tracks, and when they reached the cave, the small brown dog began to growl. But the bear had gone. Inside, they found the bracken nest was squashed flat. The small brown dog began to growl again. He could smell bear. They were certain the bear would come back. And you know what? It did. That night there was a blizzard. The wind howled and the snow began to pile up in drifts outside the cave. And as the little girl and the small brown dog watched the storm, they saw a great dark shape coming up the mountainside. Soon the shape filled the mouth of the cave. What do you think they mean by the mouth of the cave? So if you look at this picture of the cave here, can you see this circle? It looks a bit like an open mouth, doesn't it? So it means the entrance to the cave. The bear would have come right in, but the little girl and the small brown dog barred the way. This was their cave, and no one could take it from them, not even a big brown bear. They would fight for it. The bear could easily have brushed them aside with his big paw, but it didn't. It looked down at them with strange, sad eyes, then turned and left the cave. So he's not an angry bear, is he? I wonder why he wants to be in their cave. The small brown dog barked and the little girl cried out in triumph and threw a snowball after the bad old bear as it disappeared into the stormy night. Then they heard the sound from the cave behind them, and creeping out from the darkest corner behind the squash bracken nest came a tiny bear cub. Ah, look. So why do you think the big brown bear wanted to be in the cave all along? The little girl realised that the bear was not a bad bear after all, just a mother bear looking for her cub. She dropped her spear and ran out into the blizzard, calling after the mother bear. But she was gone, and the falling snow had covered her tracks. You see, they're calling out. After a while it stopped snowing, the wind broke up the clouds, and the moon shone down on the wide, lonely wilderness. There was no sign of the mother bear. The little girl turned and trudged back up to the cave. The snow had drifted deep, too deep for short legs, and she carried the small brown dog under one arm and the tiny cub under the other. And who should they find sitting waiting by the cave but the mother bear? She's gone back for her, hasn't she? That winter, the cave high up on the mountains was the snuggest, warmest place in the wild wilderness. But by the spring, they all had fleas. Can you see? So there's a little girl and the brown dog and the brown bear and the brown bear cub, all snuggled together, keeping warm and sharing fleas. I hope you enjoyed that story. Maybe you would like to write how much you liked it and maybe draw a picture about part of the story. And if you do, you can post it onto Seesaw. If not, that's fine, just enjoy the story.